All right, we got a short segment here, but plenty of opportunity for you to chime in at 217-629-7970. Should schools go back to remote learning when they return from the winter break? 217-629-7970. Up in Chicago, in the public school district there, they're looking at spending a bunch of money for 100,000 plus laptops in preparation for possibly having to go remote. Chicago Public School District's 330,000 students scheduled to return January 3rd, but officials spending $39 million in anticipation of having to go remote so they can buy laptops. You're seeing this play out elsewhere throughout the state. Some other districts are looking to go remote or have gone remote, even in some central Illinois schools. In Pike County, the Pleasant Hill School District said that it was hit with both the flu and COVID-19, so they went remote. Also, the Virginia School District, with nearly 33% of students testing positive for the virus, had to close because of COVID and go remote. And here locally, we've got a Springfield District 186 school board member who says that this needs to be something to consider as students in Springfield District 186 gear up to head back into class on January 10th. But they've got a board meeting for the Springfield School Board set for January 4th, where one school board member wants to make this an issue, raising it in a letter to the superintendent and to others, saying that, here's a quote, "We have to acknowledge what's going on and put out there that this is a big deal and find out what the options are." The board member, Micah Miller, according to the State Journal Register reporting on this, says, "I still hear people dismiss what's going on as, well, it's just more people testing. If the theory is that we're just more aware of positive cases, and if that were true, then why are we seeing a surge in our hospitals?" And yes, there is a surge in the hospitals, but the surge is being compounded by fewer actual staffed hospital beds. I broke down some of the numbers earlier, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 217-629-7970. So statewide, we had December 1st of 2020, and I'm just looking at ICU beds here. There were 3,309 ICU beds that were staffed across the state. That's COVID-19 patients, non-COVID-19 patients, and vacant beds that were staffed. So December 1st, 2020, more than a year ago, 3,309 staffed ICU beds. Fast forward to December 27th this year, so more than a year later, there are only 2,965 total staffed ICU beds in the state of Illinois. That's a decrease of 344 ICU beds that are staffed. Why is that? So while we point to, the issue of the hospitals as possibly a reason why to keep kids from school and have them do remote learning again, we have to ask the question as to why we have the decrease in hospital beds that are staffed by 340 plus for ICU beds. It's more than 1,000 fewer beds in the past year that are staffed when it comes to overall hospital beds. And then you got to think about the impacts of kids being remote and how that we've seen diminish their learning capabilities, diminish their test scores, increase the risk of people being abused at home and not being seen by teachers. So there's a whole host of things that need to be considered other than just the COVID-19 rates when it comes to how kids are treated during this pandemic. 217-629-7970. Got just a few moments here. Get your reaction to it. Should kids be going back to school remote when they return from winter session? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Do we have a statistic on how many people go to the hospitals, are suspected of COVID, and are admitted unnecessarily? Does everyone who is diagnosed with it get admitted? And if so, is that really necessary?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we have lacked this entire time is proper context, right? We don't have the context of the numbers being reported by the county. How many of those are severe? How many are asymptomatic? And they just found out, oh my gosh, I've got COVID. What? How could I have COVID? I don't have any symptoms. So we need full context of not just the hospitalizations and whether they're severe. Of course, if it's an ICU, that indicates that it's a bit more severe. But what about the overall total positives? Are they severe cases? Are they mild cases? Or are they merely just somebody who wanted to test out of a precaution, doesn't feel sick, but somehow they discovered they've got COVID?
Okay, now on the subject of school kids and going with the COVID thing, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a concern years ago about violence towards teachers in the public schools? And if you were a teacher in Chicago and someone offered you the ability to teach from your home, and you're in one of those schools, wouldn't you not want to go to school?
Well, the role of the teachers union in all of this is kind of fascinating, especially over the summer when you saw the change of CDC policy, because the policy was over the summer, it was, hey, if you got vaccinated, no more masks. Even in schools, no more masks if you're vaccinated. So they had that policy in place, but then apparently some, behind-the-scenes pressure from teachers unions that have given tens of millions of dollars to Democrats who are now in control of the CDC. They put pressure on, and the CDC reversed that and said, hey, we're going to require masks again in schools. So interesting to see the relationship there and how that's played into the overall impacts of COVID policy when it comes to schools. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Okay, so this isn't necessarily about schools, but go to a hospital, go into the ER and tell me if there's problems. My father-in-law needed a room, sat in an ER bay for 60 hours. Oh. So there's problems because 84% of the people in the hospitals are unvaccinated. So don't put it on the hospitals. Don't put it on lack of beds. It's because sick people are there that didn't need to be sick.
But here's the deal. We've got plenty of beds. It's the staff available for those beds. And one question I have, the question I have is why do we have staffing issues?
Because they're done. They're burned out. For 2 years, they've been yelled at, screamed, told they have to give out ivermectin. It's ridiculous. 84% of people in the hospital don't need to be.
I don't think that people are quitting the hospital jobs because people are screaming at them because they want ivermectin. Okay. I don't think that's the case.
Right. But go to an ER room and see what it looks like. It's a war scene. Because unvaccinated people are taking up beds, a person who needs a bed should not have to sit 60 hours and wait. That's tragic. And it's because people won't get their politics out of it and get the vaccine.
There's a variety of reasons people who are apprehensive of getting the vaccine aren't getting the vaccine. It could be medical reasons. It could be, and it could be, and they could have allergic reactions, or they have religious reasons why they don't want to get the vaccine.
Or they could be dumb Republicans that are trying to prove a point.
It's just Republicans. What about minority populations that are apprehensive about it? Are they also dumb?
That's not 84% of the hospitals. That's not 84% of the people who are unvaccinated because they chose to be unvaccinated.
Again, I don't know if you can paint with a broad brush that it's dumb Republicans that aren't vaccinated, because there's a whole host of other reasons.
Go to the hospital and look and see what it looks like. It's a war zone.
Well, I'm looking at the stats, but I'm looking at the stats as well, and we have more than 1,000 fewer staffed hospital beds in the past more than a year. And for ICU beds statewide, we have more than 340 fewer staffed ICU beds. So, again, I was allowing you to talk, but again, we need proper context for all of this. We can't paint with broad brushes. We need to focus on the best medical outcomes. All right, that's all I got for you today. David Greising joining Jim Leach for Full Disclosure. That's